Welcome to this first lesson of Module 2, and in this lesson we're going to be taking a look at stylistic elements of the head shape for manga style. And starting right off the bat, we're actually going to compare a manga styled head to more of a Western styled head, or heads that are based on idealistic proportions, or your sort of realistic skull type. On the left I'm going to do the Western style head, and on the right I will do the manga style head, and I'll talk through what is actually different about these two as we go through it. So I'm going to put down a center line here on our Western style head and just follow the contour of that sphere. And I'm going to start implying with this little ridge. These are 3/4 views, by the way. I'm going to start implying with that little ridge the eye socket, move down into the cheek and start defining my chin and my jaw area. And then I'm going to pull that up. I can draw in my ear shape here and get the rest of my head. We'll keep things rough and loose. And because I've defined the ear, that helps me already define out the top of my eyebrows and the bottom of my nose. You can see already that this is significantly different from how we measure out our manga style. Moving into the manga illustration here, let's just neaten that circle up a little bit. I'm going to come down with more of a flat line, and I'm going to drop my cheek very low and come into the chin, and then bring up that shape again, almost have a cheek-like line again, and then come back into my head. Let me just modify that angle. All right, and we know based on our proportions that half of our vertical height here defines our eye line. All right, let's go back to the Western style head, and I'm going to draw in some eyes. Just keep it out sort of a Western style cartoony design. Put in our eyes here, draw in a nose, put in a mouth, and let's get some eyebrows in here, and draw in a bit of a neck. And you can already see that the proportions of the Western style drawing are significantly different to manga style in a number of ways. Let's get back to our manga style drawing here, and we're going to mark out our third. We'll draw in our eyes here, just our eye indications, put in our nose, put in our mouth, and draw in our neck. And we can indicate our ear here. Let's get our 3/4 view going. And then our eyebrows. We won't go into too much detail drawing the faces. We're really focusing on our head design here. And when you look at our Western style and our manga style, and I just use Western as a contemporary term, probably change in the future, but really it's just a style that's based off of the normal human skeleton. You can see we have massive proportional differences. But something critical and key that I want to point out here is how we handle the far side of the face in the 3/4 view. And in a normal or a realistic based style, which is based on the normal human skull, we tend to indicate this brow indentation going into the eye socket indentation and then coming around to a high cheekbone. But conversely, a stylistic trait of manga, and you'll see this in a lot of manga and anime illustrations, is that the far side of the face in a 3/4 view, in a 3/4 rotation, right? So we've rotated the head just slightly 3/4 to the left or to the right. In this instance, it's to the right of the characters. We have a very sort of flat, long line, not too much emphasis, and we don't really draw in this brow line area. And we have a very low cheek. Now, whether it's a male character or female character, you will notice this is a common trend. You can see that the cheek heights differ significantly here. And this is a key thing to remember when you're drawing manga heads. Of course, it takes on the manga style proportions, but you want to draw that very low cheek. And in fact, on the near side, or the side that faces us in a 3/4 view, what we tend to see is an angle that almost looks like a mirror of the cheek's angle on the near side of the face. Now this could be the jawline, it could be a cheek line, even though technically the cheek line is probably a little bit higher up. This is often unclear. It can be quite unclear. And the reasons for this is that manga heads themselves are really the most iconographic part of the style. Of course, we do have the body proportions and the hand proportions to take into account, but the manga head itself is really about expressing very clearly, showing the characters' feelings and expressions very clearly. And so it's not really based on a realistic head per se, but rather it's a symbolic abstraction of a realistic head. And so it's largely symbolic. And you'll see this play out in how the nose is drawn, and how the eyes are drawn, and how we approach the eyes, and so on and so forth. Now, if we take a look at a normalized sort of skull drawing, and I'm just going to do a quick rough version, you'll see that a normal human skull tends to have the cheekbones kind of fanning out in a wing sort of fashion. I'm just going to kind of do a very quick version of a human skull here. It's probably a little bit stylized. It's not the end of the world. Drawing that lower jaw. The teeth would be around here. The main important factor that I want to point out over here is really this section here of the normal type of skull, where we kind of have the indentation coming around, this wing of the high cheekbone, which then kind of curls in, and then we go into this sort of half cylinder shape of the front of the mouth. It's pretty critical. But a manga skull would look significantly different. A manga skull would have a much bigger cranium area, and it would have a much lower wing, if you will, or cheekbone. So the manga skull would be something like this, significantly larger eye sockets for one thing, and a very low down cheekbone structure, something like this. And I know it's crazy to think, wow, would manga really have a different skeletal structure? And technically, if we were to draw a manga skull, it would, because it follows a completely different proportional rule set to the normal head structure. Right. So the key thing here is to remember that we want to keep our bone structure really, our cheekbone really low on our manga styled faces, compared to a westernized style where we're really emphasizing this overall shape on a 3/4 view on the far side. And also don't forget that sometimes this angle can replicate on the near side of a manga styled face in terms of that low cheek angle, or that low cheek bend. All right. Now, in addition to this, let's take a look at how we can manipulate the shape of the head with the jaw section and the chin section and achieve different looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a very baseline head here for us to work on, and duplicate this across a few times. And when you think to our feminine and masculine lines that we've learned in the previous module, we can start applying some of that theory here to get a very different look to our heads. So, for example, if this were going to be a female character, we could bring a nice low cheek here, but keep the angle really round, a pointy chin, come back, another round cheek, and go up to the rest of the head. What we can do then is, if we want a young boy character, we can bring that same line down, keep things still a bit round, but maybe give this character a little bit more of a chin this time, keeping things soft and round. He's young, low cheek, and back up to the head. Let's take the character to a bit more of a masculine line level. What we're going to do is we're still going to do our low cheek, but we're going to be much more harsh with that angle. And we're going to be a little bit broader and harsh with the angles of the chin, still keeping the low cheek design, and another harsh angle up. If we want to go even older, we can increase the width of that chin line even more to give us much more of a masculine look and a much more angled jawline. Now, in addition to this, the masculine and feminine lines, we can also really utilize the power of the neck thickness to imply the age of the character or the strength of the character. Small, weaker characters tend to have thinner necks. Big, burly, bulky characters tend to have thicker necks. Feminine characters tend to have thinner necks. Masculine characters tend to have thicker necks. So in this instance, we can add in a thin neck here, not according to normal human anatomy in terms of a lot of the female characters. It's just very much a thin neck. The neck typically in a real human anatomy connects underneath the ear, but in manga it's not necessarily the case. This second one, we can thicken the neck a little bit more. maybe it's a boy character or a young boy character. The third neck, we'll take it to even thicker levels. Perhaps it's a teacher or an older character. And then in the last one, we can do a very thick neck. And this can be our burly characters, our really big, strong, masculine characters. I'm adding in a little bit of the sternocleidomastoids there, which is really those muscles in your neck, just to give us that feeling. And so, really, in summary, you can see how we use the feminine and masculine lines here, as well as some gentle curves, to give us different effects in terms of manipulating the age of our manga characters. All right, so really just think about these widths and practice them out. Do a few of these drawings and practice them out. In this lesson, we've really sought to take a look at how we approach our head designs. It's important to know the cranium doesn't really change much, right? The cranium really stays a sphere in manga style drawings, and what we can do is we can really use our lines, our feminine masculine lines, and the shape of our jaws and our chin lines to define the gender or the masculinity or femininity of our characters. Going back to these initial illustrations, really keep in mind the absolute difference in proportions to westernized style or idealistic proportions, which you can learn more about in Character Art School Complete Character Drawing if you want more character fundamentals. And the difference between that and the manga style proportions, which you can see are significantly different. Absolutely significantly different. So really, when you're drawing in a manga style, you have to put your brain into a different gear and really grab at its proportional rules and the way manga is done. Also, finally, in ending, keep in mind the symbolic nature of manga style heads. Really about simple, easy to read expressions that can appeal to young people, very young people, up to very old people, where realism is secondary to understanding the character's expression and their feelings and their emotions. That is it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson.